us in here like rap music? How many of y'all familiar with Fat Joe? Y'all know where I'm going with this, right? Well, Fat Joe has a rap song, and he's got Remy Ma on there, and I think, I don't know if Eminem is on this particular song, but he has a lot of people on the song. He may be Eminem on there, but I know for sure it's Remy Ma and Fat Joe, and I do believe French Montana may be on it or something. Well, the song is called All the Way Up. And the lyrics goes like this. It says, all the way up. Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up. So what this song is implying is that he is at a elevated state, right? A status. Meaning he got all the money, he got nice cars, he got the nice houses, like he's all the way up. And it even, in some of the lyrics, it even made reference to where he lived. If he says, if you want to know where I live, as I'm paraphrasing, look to the hills, but look all the way up. And so when we think about a house on a hill, if it's on a hill, that means it's in a elevated state, right? Are you with me? Yes. So he says in this song, nothing can stop me, I'm all the way up. Well, today I want to talk about Jesus being in a elevated state. Right? But in order for us to arrive at this elevated state, we need some context, right? And I don't want to assume that everybody knows the story about the crucifixion, the betrayal, and and all those good things. So allow me the time to walk us through this process, because oftentimes we can look at the scripture and we can draw wisdom, and of course we're not Jesus, and of course we have not died on a cross. Right. And of course we have not been risen from the dead like he has, but there's times in our lives that the Lord will do some raising in our lives. Well, he will raise us to an elevated state. Maybe not like Fat Joe, where he's popping his own collar and saying all the way up, because he's talking about houses and cars and things like that. But God raises us up in an elevated state when he lifts us out of the mud, and he raises us up out of sin, and he puts us in an elevated state where we're living for him. Are you with me? Yes. But not only that, I'm not saying that God can't elevate us to a different, his position again. Fat Joe's position when he's in his house is at an elevated state. That means he's at a high position, right? And there's times in our lives where God will lift us to a high position, perhaps in a job, right? Right. And perhaps he might do it where he may put us in some high positions, not only in a job, he might put us in some high positions in our church, things like leadership and things like that. But also, not only that, that's a posture of being. Elevated posture. Fat Joe is referring to himself as being high up. And so Jesus here is talking about, he's telling them, he's giving his farewell speech, if you will, and he's now ascending to heaven, where he will be seated, where he is seated at the right hand of the Father. It don't get no higher than that, right? And so to give you some context is, what has happened with Jesus is Jesus had walked the earth, and he had disciples that followed him around. And while he was on the earth, he was doing work. He was doing missions. He was doing ministry. And he did this. It started at the age of 30 when he entered into ministry, and it ended at 33. But while he was here on earth, in these 3 years that he was doing ministry, his resume read as follows, meaning that he was healing the sick, he was opening blind eyes, right? He was feeding thousands and thousands of people. He was casting out demons, right? He was raising people who was sick. He was raising them to good health. So he was going about doing good. But he had some haters. And the haters came from out of the church. These were some religious leaders. So you would think that if he's doing things that are good, why would he have these haters? But what happened is they had a way that they was doing things. They was operating under an old model, and Jesus represented a new model that was coming into the earth. And whenever you usher in something new, sometimes you get get some kickback.
Yeah.
Especially if some people's positions feel like they're threatened, right?
Right.
So they hated on Jesus, so they always looked for a way to try to kill him. But every time they tried to kill him, he was always able to get away, right? You know, like I learned that when my brother used to play football, and I used to have to, what do you call that when you kind of juke him? I juked him, right?
Yeah.
So he was always getting away. But again, remember, I was telling you that there was some disciples that was with him, that was traveling with him all around, right? Even into the Passover table where he was having dinner with them, the Passover dinner. But although he had all these people with him, there was somebody in the group who was a dirty somebody. He would end up betraying him. Have you ever been a victim of betrayal where somebody's close to you, you think they your boy or they your homegirl or your sister, because now it could be family. They're close to you, but then they do something where they betray you, and betrayal hurts. You know why betrayal hurts? Because it's always coming from someone that you wouldn't have never thought would have done it to you. So here he is. He's looking for ways to betray him, to the point where he went to the religious, you know, those religious leaders that wasn't feeling Jesus. He went to them and came up with a deal on how he would hand Jesus over. He was going to betray him and hand him over to him, because they was always looking for a way to kill him. So he does this. And so prior to all this, as they were all walking with him, all of them are privy to this information. Jesus, even though he was going about doing good, he shared with them a prophetic word that would come forth. And how many of us know that when we talk about prophetic, it is something that is to come, meaning that it's not happening just yet. So he was sharing with these followers that he would be betrayed, he would be handed over, and he would be crucified and die, but he would also rise. Are you with me?
Yes.
And so what we have here is, guess what? All of the things that I talked about had come to pass. The betrayal. He was falsely accused. He was handed over to Pilate, even though Pilate didn't find any evidence that supported what they were saying and wanted to let him go. They pressed the issue and they said, crucify him. Crucify him. And so guess what? They nailed our Savior to the cross.
Like it's to the thief.
They're between two thieves. He bled, suffered, and died. He bled, suffered, and died. And then a man by the name of Joseph asked for his body. He took his body down, prepared it, and he prepared it by putting on these linens, wrapping it in linens. And then after he wrapped it in linens, he put it in a tomb, a new tomb. This tomb had not been used, right? He put it in a tomb, and then he closed it off with a stone, right? And so here's this prophetic word starting to unfold. He was betrayed. He was falsely accused. He was crucified and he died. But the part, as we're looking at this, he hasn't risen yet. But then after he was buried and in the tomb, it looked like things was over, right? Because, death itself, that seems like final, right? You could have left him on the cross and we would think you ain't coming back from death, right? Because, we do have an instance where somebody was raised from the dead. Remember Lazarus? But guess who was raising him from the dead? Jesus. So the one who was doing the raising is the one now that's dead. So the situation looks impossible, because if Jesus don't do it, it can't be done, right? Are you with me? And so the one who does the raising is the one who's dead. Not only that, you done wrapped him. Because remember when Jesus raised him from the dead and he told him to come forth and he came forth? That was him calling him forth. But then he told the other people that was around, he told them, loose him and let him go. That meant that he couldn't unloose himself, right? He had to have some assistance, right? So here we have Jesus wrapped in linen, right? Are y'all going somewhere with this? So he's dead, he's wrapped in linen, and now he's in a tomb, he's buried. And then there's a stone. But not only that, you know them religious leaders? They were so hateful. They felt like if they needed to do something, they needed to go a step further. And they asked Pilate to put a seal over. They asked him to safeguard this grave because they felt like the disciples would go in and steal the body. So they requested that Pilate safeguard it. So what Pilate did is he had a seal be placed on this stone, and he also positioned a guard. So Jesus did it. Yeah. Okay. He's wrapped up, buried, stone, seal on the stone, meaning that you can't break the stone to even get the stone rolled away, and then you have a guard. But then it looked good, right? But on the third day, some women went out there early, like the morning, like this morning. They went out there before daybreak. It was like the early hours of the morning. And they noticed that the stone is rolled away.
The seal was broken.
Yeah, the seal is broken, the stone is rolled away. The linens are there, but Jesus is gone. And it took them a minute. It took them for some angels to share with them. You know, the angel said to them, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead? Jesus is not here. He has been risen." So we see here that Jesus, just like Fat Joe, not just like because he's not equivalent, he's not equal. I mean, Fat Joe is definitely, there's no competition between him and Jesus. But he's now if he's risen, they said he's risen, that means he has risen from the dead. But before he actually ascended to heaven and is seated on the right hand of the Father, he went to visit some of his disciples because although they see the grave, although they see the evidence that he's not there, it didn't click for them that he has actually risen. So he helps them along, if you will, by sharing with them, by visiting with them and sharing the evidence that it's me, Jesus, although I haven't ascended to my permanent spot until it's time for me to come back again. But he was sharing with them, this is me. I have risen. I have conquered death. Okay? But what I want us to really look at is look at all the challenges that came with it. Look at think about when it's us, when God is doing something in our life, when he wants to raise us up. Look at some of the challenges that we could be faced with because he has some challenges. They were there. Challenges was there. That didn't mean that they were any match for him because you want me to tell you how they're no match for him? Okay, look at death. Death couldn't hold him. Because although the stone was rolled away, it wasn't rolled away in order for Jesus to walk out of there. It was rolled away for us right now and for them then to understand that this is evidence that the man that you were seeking, he's no longer here because he has been elevated. He has risen, okay? So the stone was rolled away for us as testimony for us that he ain't here. He's gone. He's risen. Okay, so here, again, he has shown himself as proof that he's no longer there. But again, back to what I was saying, look at the challenges. Look at the challenges he was met. He was met with death. That couldn't hold him. Because guess what? Nothing could stop him. He's all the way up. Right? So death couldn't hold him. Not only death, what about them linen garments that was wrapped around him? Remember, Lazarus needed help to be loosed. But even with that, when something's wrapped around you, that's like holding you hostage, right? But yet, not even that, not even death clothes could hold him because nothing could stop him. He's all the way up. Right?
All the way up.
So the linens, the linens had to release him, right? They couldn't hold him. But not only that, he was in a tomb. That means buried. You're buried. A hard place, a dark place. But even that couldn't stop him because guess what? Nothing could stop him. He's all the way up. You think that was enough? What about that stone? Which could represent a barrier. Have you ever had a barrier in your life where you felt like you couldn't get through it? But look at Jesus. Not even the barrier could stop him because guess what? Nothing can stop him. He's all the way up. But not only that, what about that seal? That's the government. Pilate is the governor. That's a government seal. That means the government can't stop him because guess what? Nothing can stop him. He's all the way up. But not only that, did you see the guard?
It disappeared.
The guards, when we think about guards are usually in place to keep people out, right?
Right.
To keep people in also, right?
Yeah.
So he was placed there to guard that dead body, right?
Yes.
But guess what? He was there to watch and make sure nothing goes in or goes out, right? But even that, you can't guard him. Oh, wait a minute, I know what I'm talking about. You know how in basketball, you know like that, what's that called? Is that juice?
That's a juke.
Yeah.
It's a juke.
When in basketball, you know, when somebody on the offense is trying to go score, it's that defense that needs to do what? Guard. In order for that player not to get that ball down court, right? And so it's the guard's job to guard the ball, to keep the person from scoring, right? So here in a sense, we have this guard that's trying to guard this body from being removed or whatever. But how many of us know that when you're talking about Jesus, nothing can stop him. He's all the way up. Nothing can stop him. He's all the way up. And in the same sense, there's a prophetic word that God has placed over our lives. And God, again, we've seen all the stuff that was happening. We've seen that he was betrayed like he said he would. He was accused like he said he would. He was crucified like he said. He died. He was buried. He was wrapped up in all of that stuff, right? And he still was raised from the grave, just like he said he would. So whatever word that the Lord has placed over our lives, it will continue until it does what it's supposed to do. Yes, when he died, it didn't look good. Again, remember, he died on a Friday. They took him down from the cross. They wrapped him in grave clothes. It didn't look good because when you die, it don't look. It looks impossible. When they wrapped him in grave clothes, that means they had him bound. It didn't look good. It looked impossible. But then they didn't stop there. They put him in a tomb. It didn't stop there because that looks bad because that means you done buried the dead thing, right? So of course it don't look good. It don't look like it's going to go forward. There's times in our life where what God is saying to us, what God is saying that is what he's going to do in our life, how he's going to raise us up, it doesn't look like what he said. But if we take our time and go back to the grave and look where he's in this word and look at the many things that he had to go through in order to get to that risen place, the same is true for us. So in our lives, it may look dead. There's times in our life where it's going to feel like our situation is buried. It's going to look like it's all bound up. It's going to look like that it was impossible, like the stone can't be rolled away. But just like Jesus, that same power that raised him from the grave is the same power that's working in us. So you may feel down. And sometimes we may feel down, we may feel kicked, we may feel like we're in an impossible situation. I don't know, you may think, some of us in here may be anxious about what next week brings or what the week after that brings or what's the next step for me. And things may not be looking good. You know, you may have burnt some bridges or two in your life and things look like it's impossible. You might have some strained relationships and it looks impossible, it looks dead. But guess what? If God deems it to be raised up, to be resurrected, because God can resurrect some situations in our life. It can be dead. It can be buried. It can be, a stone can be in the way. It can be having a barrier in the way. But guess what? When God says it, Isaiah 55 says that his word goes forth and it does what it is sent to do and it will not return unto him void. You want me to make it plain? Basically what he says is, whatever I say, I'm going to sent it to do because nothing can stop me. I'm all the way.